Frank Stanisci of NLL Lacrosse Talk. Welcome to the Spanglish Sports World Network on Zingo TV Channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate, leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. And now we're, I guess, other than Gary, we have the who's who of lacrosse here, Coach Bob Terring, Mr. Lacrosse, Roy Simmons, and Chief Oren Lyons. Gentlemen, good day to you, and thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Always a pleasure for us to have such greatness on board. We always like to ask, the first thing we like to ask is, what brought you to lacrosse? And we'll start with Coach Terring.
I went to a school, St. Paul's School in Baltimore, Maryland, and you were handed a lacrosse stick in the fourth grade, and you carried it to class. And it's been part of my life ever since.
Roy Jr.?
Well, I lived with a coach, my father. He didn't have much choice. And that was the conversation in the house. At the dinner table, we talked about lacrosse, or we didn't talk at all.
And the Chief?
Well, I was brought up with lacrosse. It was in our house. First thing I remember is my father fixing his pads. I might have been about 3 or 4 years old at the time. And so far back, we were using the lamplight.
So Chief, the first question is to you. We hear about lacrosse being the healing sport, the sport of the maker. Could you please, from your definition as a chief, describe the connection between lacrosse and your background, the Aboriginal background?
So the game has a name, and it's not English. It's Onondaga Kachikwae. That's the official name of the game. Kachikwae. And that means they bump hips. Kind of interesting to me, they took the hip check out of the game. But anyway, that's the origin, and our stories about the game goes back when the earth was covered with water and the game was playing on the other side. That's how back it goes. And the story starts from there and comes on down to where we are today. So it's part of our culture. It's a major part of our ceremony. And to the Haudenosaunee, it is not a sport. It is a game. And at times it's a very crucial game. And so the first games were played for the welfare of the people. So that's the origin way back. And as I said, they were playing this on the other side when the earth was still covered with water.
The Aboriginal community has been given. I won't define it, but they've been given more attention. Our culture is trying to reach out to your culture and show it a little more respect and, of course, acknowledgement. How important is the game of lacrosse in that regard?
Well, it's about time we had some respect for the original people of this hemisphere.
Absolutely.
Right now, basically, politically, we're outliers. We're the pesky Redskins that get in front of, what would you say, progress. But, you're going to take land from somebody. You can't take land from a good guy. You got to make them bad.
Of course.
Absolutely. So here we are, gentlemen. You all have a lot of experience. Bob, first of all, help us to understand what message the three of you want to bring here today.
Well, I'm going to give it a little background. I think it all started about 1981. I was executive director of Lacrosse Foundation, which is now USA Lacrosse. And I had a very progressive board of directors. And they decided to bring the World Games to the United States in 1982. And that time, there were only 4 countries playing: Canada, Australia, England, and the United States. And the production was unbelievable. We had thousands of people. And I had a staff of 2, myself and a wonderful woman named Sharon Grebe, who's Bobby Grebe's wife. That went so well that we came back after evaluating, and they wanted to do something else in 83. So they wanted to create what's called Lacrosse International. And so we looked at teams of club. We had the club championships. We had the Division I, Division III champions. And it so happened that Syracuse won that year. And of course, I had some conversations with Roy. And it came up in the conversations of, why don't we have, at that time, an Iroquois national team? There had not been a field team created at that point. So we went to discussions, and he put me in touch with Oren. And I made a couple trips up to Buffalo and went to the Turtle. As I told Oren, I went to a meeting in there. Everybody was in full regalia, and I'm in a suit, white guy sitting at the long end of the table. But we worked it out, and they arrived in 83 and played international. And they played the Division I champs and the Division III champs. And of course, then, Roy's team was playing as Division I champs. And it was a huge success. And from that point on, as Oren will tell, we supported it. We tried to keep it moving. And now the Haudenosaunee Nation is number 3 in the country, in the world, and should get the recognition, as hopefully we'll talk about during the hour, to be representative in the future, both in the World Games and in the Olympics.
Absolutely.
Yeah, important subjects.
Yeah, I want to just bring up just if I could step in for a second, the sovereignty thing and all the problems that were around with World Lacrosse and not recognizing the Iroquois as a sovereign nation and not allowing them to play. And thank goodness for Ireland to give up their spot. What can be done? Because this is ridiculous.
I don't know. It's a difficult question because that issue was not presented to us. We just didn't hear anything. So I sent a letter to them requesting, that they were going to have these games down in Alabama, and we were not invited. So I sent a letter asking why we were not invited, and then they said, "Oh well, you're not a nation, so you're not playing." So that's where we illustrated, yes, we are a nation. And it took our lawyers and everything else to battle our way into it. But I think we've settled the issue as far as we're concerned. And just to remind the country itself, we have the first treaty with the Continental Congress in 1775. That's where we officially began, because at that time there was no United States.
Right.
There was the Continental Congress. And so the Continental Congress, getting ready for warfare with their father, so to speak, they called a meeting with the Six Nations because they knew that we held the balance of power. And that discussion took place in Albany, New York in 1775. It's a treaty that took almost 5 months to get started from. And I think it's a treaty that every university, every high school, every government should have, because there they laid down the premises of who we were. And they said at that time, we're about to challenge our father in England. He's not treating us right. There's a whole discussion about that. But we would like you to stand aside. We know that you're longtime associates with England. And our leader said, well, of course, we know, we've been watching this develop over a period of time. And we think that a position of neutrality is, we see this as a battle between father and son. And it's well known that you don't step into a family fight. If you step into a family fight, you do that at your own risk. And so, interesting enough, we had an earlier discussion that year, 1775, with the English crown, and they said the same thing. They said, could you guys, we're going to have a fight. They said, could you guys stand to the side? That was early that very same year, 1775, and both sides were very concerned about which side the Six Nations would take, and they both decided that might be better if we just stayed out of it. And of course, our position was, well, you guys duke it out, and we'll see what's left, and we'll deal with that at the end of the discussion. So when you did finish the Revolutionary War, and there's a whole lot there, you made a peace treaty in Paris, France, 1983, or 1783. And their next treaty was with the Six Nations, 1784, Fort Stanwix, because that was your most important discussion as a new nation. All of this is not in your history books, should be in your history books, but it is not. And very carefully annotated, and all those discussions are there on record, but it's just not made available to the American public.
That's part of the history, right, Chief? That it's about honoring your agreements, right? This is the problem we have in the world everywhere, right? Do people honor their agreements?
You better have a good. If you got to keep your word, basically, that's fundamental. You got to keep your word.
Well, you know what would be really nice, Chief? If we honored the word we made hundreds of years ago today. Might help. We could start there. Just for an opener.
Well,
Listen, I appreciate you and your people's patience, because I can't even imagine the kind of patience that's required, and the ability to look the other way and or survive what you guys have survived through, what your people have survived through. But in the question of lacrosse, you've had a chance to stand up with the most important people politically, sending a message. What was that message like when you sent it? The purpose?
When we sent it to who?
You made a political, a statement in a political forum. Gary, what forum was it? Because right now
one of the main ones was the UN General Assembly.
Right, the UN General Assembly was one of them.
Oh yeah, well that was on the broad perspective of human beings as opposed to nature. Basically we're all one family. We come in all colors. We're all the colors of the rainbow. The human beings are, and we're all sizes and shape. We're like dogs, come in all shapes and sizes, but they're all dogs. And we're the same way, but we're all people. We're relatives, we're family. We can change blood. If you get into a hospital, they're not going to ask what color you are.
No.
Your blood can be changed, so you can't get much closer than that.
Right.
But the color has been politicized over the world, so that's what you're feeling today.
I also want to emphasize that when you use the term "we're all dogs," you mean it in a respectful manner, because your people believe in spirit animals, and they're good things, not a way to denigrate.
No, we don't believe in spirit animals. That's an observation your people have about it. They don't understand that. It's just simply a respect for life. We have ceremonies of Thanksgiving, goes around the lunar clock. We just finished the planting ceremony last week. And it's, because of COVID, we have to close things down short, but it's usually 6 days of Thanksgiving song speeches for planting. Next one is going to be for the strawberry fruit. Next one will be for the beans and so forth during the summer, and then the corn, and then the harvest, and then the midwinter. So it's a lunar clock, and it goes round and round and round. But it's all about giving thanks. And the spirit, all life has spirit. All life, tree has spirit. They all have spirit, you know. We don't worship any of them. We're just thankful for what they do. Without them, it'd be a pretty bleak world, and we seem to be working in that direction, which isn't good.
No, we lack respect and appreciation. I guess back to lacrosse. Bob, you want to carry on?
Yeah. The impact that the Hautestounians have had in lacrosse, and I'm going to defer to Roy because he's had good experience. Many of the NCAA programs that exist today have really benefited from the Native American culture and from their talent. Roy, can you fill us in a little bit of it? You've had a lot of experience.
Well, we had rough beginnings, you know. If you go back a bit, you go to a book put out by the Smithsonian. The author's name is Tom Venom. He talks about the history of the game. The game wasn't pretty at first. The natives were not acknowledging the Canadian border, therefore they said they were a nation unto themselves. We have a hard time figuring that out or understanding it. I can remember ahead of my time when the lacrosse was played in Canada only by a white man. The Native American was not allowed to play the field game. It was their game, but they were not allowed to play it. And that's when they thought about what's happening to all these hockey rinks in the summertime. They were vacant, no ice. So they decided to play their game inside a hockey rink called box lacrosse. And now people take sides with that. They like box lacrosse and they don't care for the field game, or they like the field game and don't care for box lacrosse. And there's a crossover there. When we talk about the Native Americans, very often we think about box lacrosse right away, because they more or less didn't invent the sport. The sport was given to them as a birthright. But they did start box lacrosse because we, the white man, and particularly in Canada, would not allow them to play the field game. So it took me to get over that barrier first, to allow everybody to play the field game if they wanted to, but they still weren't considered a nation. We have a hard time understanding the religious importance of the game to the natives and the history of the game. We look at it as a sport. Oren is saying it's not a sport, it's a game. And it's an important part of the religion or the belief of the first Americans, Native Americans, Indians, if you will. So we've grown away from that only a white man's field game and only a red man's box lacrosse game. And we can come from Canada and come to the United States and we can play with stick skills taught to us from the box in Canada to play in the American field game in our universities. We still look at the Canadian border as a division between two countries. And the first Americans don't look at two countries. We look at it as one country, North American continent. And we played the field game now. We played very well. We played it very well in Canada. We played it very well in the United States. And we played from coast to coast. And all that coast to coast type of field lacrosse where we allow the box player from Canada to come down and to come to our university and play. There are 400 or 500 Canadian players now that come across the border every year to play in the United States, to play the field game, because it appears to be more important here in the United States right now, but it's growing. We're watching it grow. We're watching spectators starting to understand it, but I think you have to go back to the point where Dr. Beers in Canada made the first rules for the field game, which was the native game, but he made rules so a white man could play it, and the native was not allowed. Now the native is not considered a native anymore. He's not considered just a box lacrosse player, not just a field lacrosse player, but the entire game is open for anybody of any color to play and have fun. Maybe we don't look at it in the religious depth that the natives do, but it's here to stay. And I think the Olympics and the natives showing it's their game and they belong in it is going to increase the game worldwide.
Chief,
Absolutely.
you have something to add, Chief?
Well, the spiritual game that they talk about, what we call the medicine game, is first. That's the first game that we play every year. As soon as the snow gets off the ground, that game will be played, and it's played for the health and welfare of anybody that picks up the stick. That's the first thing, because that game you can get hurt in that game, and play for their welfare. And then during the course of the year, any one of our citizens from Onondaga or anywhere, they can call for a medicine game for their family. And that goes back to the original form. When we play those games, we go back to 2 stakes on each end. They're about 8 feet apart, about 8 feet high, and that's the goal. And on any space in between, any field you can find, and any number on either side. And the idea is to get the ball between those 2 stakes. And there's no referees, there's no coaches, there's only the stick, the ball, and the players. And it played very specially. It's what we call the creator's game. That's the medicine game. You don't play that game. We played a secular game. We were talking about the secular game, which is played for a lot of fun, and it is a lot of fun to play. And it's played to, for health purpose, keep people in shape and so forth, but just for entertainment. That's 2 separate things, very separate. So every game is not a medicine game. And when we have these medicine games, you don't need a referee, you don't need a coach. Whether there's 60 or 80 players on that field, they all know the rules. They keep the rules. The game is played hard, played no quarter ass, none given, because it's the spirit of the game that's going to help the person asking for it. Mm-hmm. And you don't need a referee. There's no fights. Nobody fights. We know the rules. You don't need a ref. The reason why you guys have refs is obvious. You can get into big tangles, And so when we say the medicine game, probably very, very few of you have ever seen one.
Right.
Yeah, I think the difference might be, if I can put it in my words, the medicine game is the game, playing the game, the good of the game.
But
with the other, it's about winning, which unfortunately, when you throw winning into the equation, there's going to be a little more competition. It doesn't have anything to do with the overall good of everybody on the field of play.
Oh, if you want to see a medicine game, you want to see a game. You talk about a game. We played to a number of goals, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Uh-huh.
odd number, and we usually play to 3, and that kind of a game can go for 3 hours or 4 hours. When you got 40 or 50 men on a field.
You say you don't have officiating, you don't have referees, but isn't it more or less a community of referees? Like you're playing as a group? No.
The players know.
Well, every individual understands the rules and plays by the rules, and there's no need to
There's no need for
even somebody wink at somebody else.
But I'll tell you what, that's one of the toughest games you'll ever play.
I don't doubt it.
I believe it.
I
I
don't
just
doubt
want
it for
to
a
go back a
second.
second, just to show how long the relationship has gone between Roy and Oren. You guys played together in Syracuse, didn't you?
4 years. We were captains our senior year. We were captains together. We started as freshmen. Oren's a lot older than me, but we started as freshmen together.
Right.
He was jumping out of airplanes, and I was playing schoolboy lacrosse. So, but we're about the same age, and we go back quite a ways. I have never played the medicine game. I played in the box game, and I played in the field game. I played in the box game back when I was younger and more foolish. I can remember there are 2 rules he was talking about. We don't need officials. There were very few rules. I can remember the rules saying there are actually 2 rules. You can't draw blood from anybody, and you can't fight.
Right.
And that was it. And you respected everybody's talent and their body, and they didn't like you for 1 hour. And when the hour was over with, it's just like a boxing match you see today. Those guys beat the hell out of one another, and then they hug in the end. Well, the lacrosse game is a lot that way. I don't see many teams that get together and shake hands after a game like they do in the field lacrosse today, as we understand it. And in the box game, I can remember being beat up pretty bad because I didn't really understand the rules and I didn't play as well as they did. But after the game was over, they were very friendly. They wanted to put their arm around you and give you a hug. And that was all right. The game's always been that way. I can't think of basketball or football games that we enjoy, or baseball, lining up after playing for an hour, playing hard, and then we shake hands and stand around and talk, and then meet our parents out in the parking lot for what we have as a celebration. It's a different kind of game in that respect. But I think we're clouded a little bit by the history of the game and the box lacrosse game, which is called lacrosse, and what it's done to the American field game today, the skill aspect of the box game, which is Canadian initially, and how it's grown, and what the Olympics now are trying to do is change the rules again. We went from the field game to the box game, and now we're going to go to an Olympic game, but it's still going to be called lacrosse, and we'll still shake hands after it's over with.
Right. Just we talked a little bit off air, Roy, about your coaching prowess and your ability to scout some of the greatest players that we have now was over the years absolutely incredible. You want to talk a little bit about what went into your scouting of these players?
Well, I think a lot of it had to do with my attitude. A lot of coaches put themselves in the game. It's an ego trip to them. And they think even though they're not on the field, they can control things from the sideline, play the game the way they want it played. Maybe take the air out of the ball, slow it down. All kinds of mousetraps to slow thoroughbred down. I always look at my players as like a horse. A thoroughbred has to run, and you let them run because that's what they do and they do best. And I was willing to allow somebody come to my program and use a little fantasy, a little bit of dream, and put the game in their heart and play it the way they'd like to play it. And I keep my mouth shut on the sideline. I'm not in the game. I'm merely a spectator on the sideline. And let them run hard, let them shoot the ball hard. And it's an exciting game for the spectator, and it's even more exciting for the players to play an up-tempo game. And I think that's what attracted a lot of players to my style that I allowed. They wanted to come to Syracuse. My closeness to the Canadian border, I had a few Canadians that were pretty darn good. And we kind of opened up the field of how to play the game for the spectator and for one another. It had more interest and more respect, I think, the way I like to play it, as opposed to the way you were supposed to be the hard coach, play this way or the highway. My way was only fantasy and dream.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you had a record of 290 and 96 losses, so I'd say it worked very well. But the other thing was that, you had thoroughbreds, but you also, they were all team players. You know, nobody just took it upon themselves to be the one thing there. Everybody played. A lot of the highlights show many, many passes along the way, usually from the goalie on upward, with these highlight reel goals. So obviously, one of the things you look for was the team aspect in the person.
Yeah,
Well,
and the teamwork.
I think there's a great love amongst my players always. They respected one another. They looked out for one another. They took more pride in having an assist than they did a goal. And I think it's important that everybody get involved in the game. We don't look for one or two heroes. We don't play a game trip up the other team by taking the air out of the ball and slowing it down. Take the coach out of the game. Let the boys play. That was what I always said. And I always wanted to put the game in their heart and play in their heart. And when they're playing the game and home that night, thinking about the next day, dream about the game and have fantasy about the game. Do things that you normally wouldn't do within the rules. And that's when you saw the back behind the back passes and some of the things that made the game exciting for the spectator, and it also made it more meaningful for the player. And I was just a recipient of the victory usually. And if it wasn't a victory, then I was to blame for letting the boys go roughshod and play without instruction. I like the way I wanted to play it, and I like the way my teams played it. And I think the most successful teams today are that way. When you look at the playoffs, the game, an up-tempo game, a lot of shots that you wouldn't have been able to take years ago because the coach wouldn't allow you to. We're kind of taking the coach out of the game and letting the boys play the game.
Slug, I agree with you 100% there. There's too many whistles in the game today. Too many. You should let the boys play. And when a referee becomes part of the game, and you see him all the time, then something's wrong. You should let the game run. And there's just too many whistles. That's my observation as well.
I agree.
Bob?
As well as a huge college career, you also were involved in that Super Series in the 80s. Do you want to talk a little bit about how that came about?
That's interesting. Yes, I had just left the Lacrosse Foundation in 1984, and I was approached by some gentlemen in Kansas City who were the PR people for the Kansas City Chiefs, and they wanted to put together a indoor lacrosse event, and they wanted to do it on roller skates. Believe it or not, they look at Oren laughing. And they commissioned me, paid me to find enough players on roller skates to play lacrosse. Well, we had a couple of tryouts, and I just couldn't stop the hysterics of laughing and watching people fall down. So I went back to them, and I said, gentlemen, this is not going to work. There is a traditional sport in Canada called box lacrosse. Why don't we stick with what works? And thank goodness they did. And then we set up the Super Series. I was coach and president of the IBLA at that time. And they set up the Super Series of America, USA against Canada. And I had the choice of any All-American I wanted, and I had plenty of them. And we played, I think, a 7-game series all around the country and in Canada to see what markets would work for them with this new Super Series. We only won one game, and that was at the Spectrum. We had a crowd, it was packed. We had a crowd of wrestler and hockey fans, and they wanted fights. They wanted a physical game. And so did promoters at that time. Thank God the rules have changed. The first time we were there, we lost, and we had beer bottles thrown at us on the arena. I had to get the players off the field. The second time we were there, we won. The only game that we won, and it was a heck of a game. It really was. And from that point on, they sold franchises, and it's the NLL today. And that's how it started. It was quite a ride, a lot of fun to get started with that. But the Canadians were just so much better than we were. overall. And of course, then they came when that NLL started, Canadians, and as some of the Americans started to assimilate. And you know better than anybody, Gary, there's a number of them now that can play with the Canadians in the indoor game.
Absolutely.
The NLL they just got their ESPN contract. I mean, it's going to be huge. But also to carry back to what we were talking about, Oren was a goalie at Syracuse, a very good one. We had the World Games in Australia back in the early 2000s. And Oren and I were sitting talking one day, and we had a Grandmasters team down in Australia, which is 45 and older. And Oren, I think, was 47 at that time. I'm not sure, 48. But anyway, he came to me and said, I want to play on the side. So I said, you can come play with my team. And he played a couple games in the goal for us in Australia and did a heck of a job. So, and then also, I believe that Oren was probably one of the first, correct me if I'm wrong, Roy and Oren, one of the first Native Americans to play in American college lacrosse. Now the Thompson brothers are the best there are. So that's how it's come and matured over the years. But am I correct, Oren? You were probably one of the first Native Americans to play college lacrosse. Am I right?
Yeah, that's true. The Thompson brothers are from Syracuse, and they're Onondagas, neighbors of Oren's. And we let them get away and come back and haunt us with their style and their attitude. But they're well versed in the game. They believe in the medicine game. They believe in the box game. They believe in the field game. They're great ambassadors for the game of lacrosse and for the people of the Onondaga Nation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, their dad was an Iroquois Nationals player. He was a midi. He was a hard-nosed midi, tough man. But never weighed more than 170 pounds. But boy, oh boy, you had your hands full with him. Always depended on him. So they're a product of our game. They're a product of our process, and they grew up playing for the Iroquois Nationals under 19 teams and earlier than that. But basically, the discipline that their father exercised on them was very important. The only thing they drink is water.
That's great. Well, also, Warren, to even go back more diversified, when you were playing and one of the first Native Americans, you also had a African American on your team, which was unusual. A guy named Jim Brown, who was kind of a decent athlete, from what I hear. Roy, you were very good. Remember, we brought him in the Lacrosse International. We flew him in for a reunion with you and Oren. Remember, down at Hopkins for the Lacrosse International for 1983. He was quite a person. I was his host, and I've never seen a human being built like he was. You played with him. Tell us about it.
Yeah, we played with him for 4 years at the university. I guess we made him for what he is today, didn't we, Oren? For you and I? We probably wouldn't have heard of Jim Brown. He was acclaimed to be the greatest player of the game that we've had so far. A lot of people saw him play in the North-South game at Homewood Field his senior year, 57, and he put on a show. He had 5 or 6 goals in the first half, and they still talk about his prowess on the cross field. It takes people like that. He had a lacrosse stick in his hands before he touched the football. He came from Manhattan High School, where they played good high school lacrosse, and he was left-handed and right-handed. Not like when I played, you had to be one hand or the other. Now you have to be ambidextrous. Jim Brown was ambidextrous back in the early 50s, and he weighed over 200 pounds, which is heavy, and he run like the wind, which a lot of lacrosse players can't. And so the combination of being ambidextrous, strong, being the size he was, and the athletic temperament he had made him a great lacrosse player. But he got forgotten in a hurry after Rockall Welch got hold of him in Hollywood. And Cleveland Browns and lacrosse wasn't ever spoken again. When you talked about Jim Brown, you talked football, the Cleveland Browns, or you talked about Hollywood. But I think, and I'm sure Oren will agree, the most important thing about Jim Brown is lacrosse. And to this day, when I talk to Jim, he'll tell me the game that he loved the best was lacrosse. But there wasn't a living to be made in it, and he had to make a living. So he went to the Browns, and then he went to Hollywood, and he's still very, very fond of lacrosse. His son, by the way, is a senior this year in high school in Hollywood, California. He plays lacrosse. I don't know if he's the size that Jim was, but Jim Brown's son from second marriage, to think that Jim Brown's on the sideline watching his son when he's 85 years old is unique. But Jim Brown, the father, was as good as there was in lacrosse. And Oren and I, we didn't have to shoot at Oren. Oren just had to stand and watch, and I was at the other end of the field, the offensive end. I never worried about getting the ball because Jim Brown would go get it for me. So we go back a long ways, Oren, with Jim Brown, the movie star, the pro football player. But best of all, we remember him for the game of lacrosse.
Yeah, he loved the game, and he's still there. When we had that big event at Onondaga in 2015, I asked him to be our keynote speaker, and we put on this. We hosted the World Federation of Lacrosse tournament, and it was very successful. They said it hasn't been matched yet in what we accomplished, but we accomplished that with the cooperation of Syracuse University, downtown Syracuse, the mayor, and the nation itself. We all worked together. It was a great event, and we lost the championship game to Canada. And well, I say, refs are important in the game.
Here we go.
As we all know, and a call turned that game on us. We scored, and a referee who was in mid-court said, no, he had his foot in the crease. In a box game with all that turmoil, I don't know how you can see the guy had his foot in the crease, but the ref that was standing on the crease raised his hands. He said, that's a good score. But that changed the course of that tournament right there. That was the last game. But it is what it is. You win and lose, and no, that's just part of the game. So, but it's reaching out now to 72 countries and growing. So I think here, what I see in the U.S. is a very hard lack of coaches for the high school age, especially. Hard to find. Yeah, I went out to Montana, and one of the cities in Montana, and they had a full squad of players there. I mean, outfitted with the best hats and with the best equipment, no coach. No coach. Boy, they were just aching to play. And that's right across the country. So coaches are really important in this game.
Hey, Oren, I want to ask you, it is, in my opinion, it was an unbelievable thing for Ireland to drop out of the Olympic show in Birmingham this summer. You want to talk about what that relationship was with Ireland that nobody probably knows?
Yeah, that's an old relationship with the Choctaw Nation. During the famine, the very famous Irish famine, the Choctaw Nation, around 1850s, 60s at that time, I think, gathered money together. And they sent money over to help feed the people. And, the Indians themselves in this country were pretty close to that position as well. But they did this extraordinary event, and the Irish never forgot that. And they're very close friends. As a matter of fact, we're in discussion with the Choctaws right now to see whether they might come on over with us when we go to Ireland. And the Irish, you have to hand it to them. That was an amazing thing for them to do.
Sure
To
was.
step out.
Absolutely.
Because when we finally fought our way and we got the agreement that we could play, then the last position that the officials had, well, that's good, you can play, but too bad we have all our teams picked. So that was their last position. We're still keeping us out of the game, and that's when Ireland backed out.
Chief, Ireland, as a people, the Irish, we're not favored people, not in Britain, not in North America. Is there something about the way they were treated? People don't realize that they also were people who weren't treated the best, right?
Well, that battle goes on over there today, as you well know.
Yeah.
That's still not settled, and I think a lot of that has to do with. But we've always had good relations with the Irish. Our iron workers, men that put up that high steel all over the world, and in New York and all the big cities, the Six Nation iron workers are very famous.
Absolutely, I had a few working for me.
Irishmen. The Irishmen were up there too, and so were the Polish. The Polish are up there too. So we've always been friendly with them.
Yep. You were talking about the games and stuff like that. Even football, they shake hands after the game, and it has a lot to do with the black culture, and I think it has a lot to do with oppressed people are the freest, it seems sometimes, within themselves. I don't know if that makes any sense to you.
Well, it is, because simply there's survivors. They have to survive by the wits the best they can, and with that you hone your survival skills, and so that makes you quicker on your feet. When you're not in charge, you have to be able to move with who is in charge. And,
Yeah, what I'm learning here today from you, Chief, is also the difference between game and sport. And as a game, it's something that you can participate in as more of a celebration than a competition. And I suppose the shaking hands would be expected after the celebration.
no, we don't do that.
You don't shake hands?
No. What happens is after the game, the teams are called together. I'm talking about the medicine game now.
Yes.
After the game, the teams are called together, and the women are the other half of our lacrosse society. They've always been in a society. They run those medicine events, and so there's a process. There's a reason for having that game at all, and so for the individual that it's being played for, at the end of the game, the women have made special food for that day. It's a feast day. It's a feast game. And they made special, everything's made that day. The ball is made that day. And that ball is handed to the person who the game is played for. That's his medicine. And all the spirit and everything that went into that game is in that ball. And he takes that. That's what he takes back with him.
That's awesome.
It's amazing.
And the women, and we all the players stand in the circle and they share that food that the women have made.
So it's not shaking hands, it's breaking bread together.
It goes way beyond that, actually.
Yeah, I got you. I understand. I was trying to understand, because I didn't ask you directly. By definition, what's the difference in your mind between sport and game, in your own words?
Well, of course, when you're playing a medicine game, you're a spiritual player. Your feet are not on the ground. You're playing at a much higher level. That's why you don't need a ref. Because you're playing a very high-spirited, tough game, hard game, but no fights and no bad feelings. It's the best you got out there, and the harder you play, the better it is for the person.
So with the medicine game, each game is separate. In that, and I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to discern the difference between game and sport. So it comes down to one event celebrated for one reason. It's a common reason why you get together, but the specific medicine game, there's a reason why you play for a purpose, and that purpose stands alone in that game, just like you hand the ball to the person and all that. Whereas with a sport, it would be a series of games, which makes it different. It's not a series of games, in other words.
No, these are individual events, and
There we go.
it has that moment and that person at that event. This year, this fall, we're planning to have a refreshment of our treaty with the Anishinaabe people that predates the white man, and it's going to be done old style, like we always had way back. The treaty and refreshing the coming to Onondaga, and at the end of it all, we're going to have a medicine game. And
With the purpose being?
That will consecrate the peace between
okay.
nations.
Would that be open to the public to see this?
I don't, it's if you happen to be passing through one of the roads at Onondaga, because the game is played right by the Longhouse, nobody's going to tell you to go away. But what happens is that they close off the roads so that we don't have traffic through there at the time.
Come early.
Because there'll be a lot of people, and we have these. We may have 7, 8, 9, 10 medicine games in 1 year.
Right.
Just somebody calls and then you just show up. Whoever's there shows up and we play the game.
This one that you're talking about in particular for the treaty, when did you say that this is going to happen?
Pardon me?
The one that you're just talking about.
The treaty game.
When is this going to happen?
It'll happen this fall in August. Maybe we're thinking of moving it back because of the heat. It's going to be very hot this year, super hot. We're in this period.
Would it be near when the Snick Festival is? There in Onondaga?
Probably go in September, but it will be a huge event, and at the end of it, will be the game, the medicine game that will close it.
That'll be spectacular.
It's for the welfare of our nations that are sitting there.
I guess TSN or ESPN won't be broadcasting that. No,
they should.
They should.
I'm not so sure if the medicine game were real popular, that the sport would grow. So when you see maybe as much as 100 people, 100 spectators on a field with a stick in their hand and no visible goalie, no lines, no officials, it's really a mayhem. But it's all important spiritually, and it's not the game we understand. It's not really a game; it's a ceremony, and it has a lot of meaning, more meaning than it does when you have officials and playing inside on a football field. The medicine game is not going to make the game, the sport of lacrosse grow too much, but yet it's very important part of the history of lacrosse. And it's very important to our first Americans.
Absolutely.
Well, gentlemen, we're out of time. I really appreciate you all doing this. I've learned a little bit about the medicine game. I'm grateful for that. I've learned a little bit about the history of lacrosse and our native people and how they are a nation and they need to be considered a nation and play within the world game or the world sport, whichever definition makes people comfortable. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for this.
Thank you for having us. Appreciate it.
Nice to see you, Bob.
Hey, good to see you, Oren. We'll be talking to you. Take care, Roy.
Good to see you, Oren.
See you later,
Good to see you,
Teammate.
Gary.
Nice to see you, Frank.
Take care, Gary.
Guys, it's been a real pleasure.
Didn't see anybody.
I learned a ton, and just to have this high level of lacrosse, one show, I think we're all truly blessed. And thank you very much for your time.
Sorry. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, folks, that ends it. That ends another show for Gary Groob, our guest, Coach Bob Taring, Mr. Lacrosse Roy Simmons, and of course, Chief Oren Lyons. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching NLL Lacrosse Talk. Seen live Thursdays at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For Lacrosse Talk, news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer, please check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Pick up a stick, get a little medicine, and enjoy the game. Thanks for watching.
Good. Thank you.